This news story, protesters have set the Supreme Court in Kathmandu on fire. This amid anti-government protests is what we are learning, as Siddhant was also highlighting that the situation on ground level continues to remain extremely fragile. And in the latest input that we are bringing to you is that the protesters have set the Supreme Court in Kathmandu on fire. Remember, they have been breaching all the high security zones. That includes not just the parliament, but in the latest, what we can tell you is that these protesters have gone ahead and set the Supreme Court on fire amid these anti-government protests, which are only snowballing by the hour. And it seems that the government, of course, has completely failed, but the army is now contemplating on when to step in and in fact control the law and order situation on the ground level. But what we can tell you in the latest that's coming in is that the protesters have gone ahead and set the Supreme Court on fire, and this indeed is going to mean more trouble for Nepal. Let's quickly go across to Akhilesh Upadhyay, who's a columnist and a former editor at Kathmandu Times. He's also joining us. Akhilesh, if I could bring you in on this piece of very disturbing breaking input that's coming in, that the protesters have set the Supreme Court on fire in Kathmandu. What are you learning and what can you share with us?
Okay, first of all, I was the editor of the Kathmandu Post.
All right.
And okay, I look at, observing the ground situation very closely last 2 days. And it was unfortunate when it started, but looks like the Gen Z protesters are, moving forward. Their demands of Prime Minister's ousters has been met. But I've also noticed, as much as I follow it closely, both on the ground and in the telephone, the appeal for calm, which is coming from the mayor of Kathmandu, who could possibly be one of the interim leaders during the transition, it will probably take a while to kind of percolate down to the protesters who are already out and about. So that being the case, the transition process has begun, if not in technical terms, political terms. For example, the protest rally I saw from my home terrace, which is very close to the Prime Minister who has resigned his office, has just turned into a victory rally. The same people, same folks, same crowd, same youth, and you can see the temperature come down. But for it all to soak in, given the fact that they are the Gen Z are young protesters on the ground and out and about, it'll take a while to come down, I think.
Akhilesh, what are you learning in terms of who is responsible for this kind of vandalism and arson that we are witnessing on the streets of Kathmandu? In fact, several other journalists that we've been speaking to are saying that many with their own political agenda, perhaps in the opposition, have also hijacked these protests. Is it these Gen Z protesters who are in fact responsible for this kind of harm that's being done to Kathmandu?
Gen Z protesters that I saw yesterday, actually on the ground, are in school uniforms, unarmed, and I don't want to speculate wildly and say there's infiltration, but at least for the Gen Z protesters that I've been seeing on the ground, including at the Prime Minister's party office for 4 hours, none of them were armed. There was no infiltration. I was with the protester for several hours. So we shall see how it goes, though. I qualify.
Akhilesh, it's interesting that you also mentioned the name of Balendra Saha, who is in fact being touted as a probable now next interim chief for Nepal at the moment. What makes you say that he will perhaps have that kind of effect on Gen Z, which maybe the army is unable to in fact sort of do right now in terms of making that point be heard as far as the protesters are concerned, to call upon more calm in Nepal?
Yeah, I would like to say that tonight and the next 24 hours will remain extremely crucial, because despite all the state apparatus, why did the past government fail? Because it had lost its political legitimacy, though it had parliamentary majority. The two biggest parties were in government. the CPN-UML, the Prime Minister's party, and Deuba's party, which is the largest party. So in fact, they comfortably have majority, well past the majority. Now the key question is, well, army can be deployed, but cannot be deployed yet without the legitimacy, perceived legitimacy on the ground. And hence, because Nepal's army doesn't have that adventurous record, I can see that they're probably even reluctant to go out and about immediately and resort to violence, That could mean quickly also then losing your legitimacy in the public eye in a world that is so wired. Don't forget the Gen Z generation, and everyone reads, kind of consumes news in real time, So I can see that stuff has started, In his statement, Balin said that prepare to hold talks with that we will be holding talks with the army in the hours. This is one. And also the second point, that the other party, one of the largest party, which has remained out of the government, the Rashtriya Swatantra Party, they have a proper organized structure, across the nation, though a very new party. That's another scenario I don't rule out, that Palin doesn't have a party per se, just a one man, a pretty popular guy in Kathmandu. But yeah, those forces will come into play, and my information says that there's a lot of backroom talks already going on.
All right. And since you talk about these backroom talks, the role that youth is playing, how do you analyze the kind of parallels when it comes to the protests in Nepal vis-a-vis the ones that have already taken place in Bangladesh just slightly more than a year ago in August, when we saw the Sheikh Hasina government being, dethroned over there? And similarly, we've seen the role that youth have played, especially in Sri Lanka as well. So what is your assessment of the role that the youth or the so-called Gen Z protesters are playing in Nepal?
There is a lot of commonality, but there is also a lot of things that are uncommon. First, what's common? They are students, they are angry, and they are fed up with the establishment, political establishment, both. Religion, however, hasn't played a crucial role in Nepal's politics. There's no, as some party that is very closely aligned with a certain religion in Pakistan, Here it is a very different case, All the major parties have been largely secular to this day. And the largest party that gets vote in terms of its support for Hinduism is one of the fourth or fifth largest party, So that has been the case. And I see this is extremely secular, this movement, but also there are so many forces intertwined, and it'll be a while before one or two or three leaders begin to emerge from the mass. For example, yesterday I was talking to a lady, one of the protesters on the ground, probably 24, and she said, "Oh, it's so cathartic to see people my age on the ground who I didn't know, and we speak similar voice." So there is a lot of hope in the way they express themselves, But of course, in no way should violence be condoned.
All right, Akhilesh, going to request you to continue staying with